This is an SM Media production.
Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Celtic Report right here on SM Media, your first Celtic Report of 2024. I'm Scott McPike. It's a pleasure to be your host as always. I'm delighted to welcome my special guest in the show, one of my favourite analysts to speak to. It's a pleasure to welcome back onto the show, Stewart Ross.
Thanks for having me on, man. Had a nice big build up there, analyst. Thanks.
Always make the guests feel welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on. Stuart, before we get into talk about kind of what we're going to talk about today, it's the winter break. Not a lot's happening. There's not a lot of transfer rumours, but we'll get into a couple of things. But it's kind of going to be an overall kind of recap over the Christmas period, kind of the big games. Stuart, I remember saying in the Boxing Day, the game after Dundee, Boxing Day post-match reaction, I remember saying specifically the next few days are massive in terms of how the mood music will be at Celtic. If it's 6 points by hook or by crook, it certainly calms the pressure down. It certainly eliminates a lot of the concerns at the start of December. And I think that is exactly how it's turned out.
Yeah, it could have. Yeah, it could have went one of two ways, like you say. And it feels like I think having all those games in such a short period of time, and then you have this kind of break to kind of look back and go, yeah, that was kind of. Yeah. There was a lot going on in a short space of time, and it was kind of hard. I think especially that probably the Hearts game. I think the Kilmarnock game, you could probably. There was a lot of things going on there as well, with like Nat Phillips, and it was a late goal, and then kind of they go into the final game, you win there, you kind of end that Champions League group on quite a high. The Hearts won at home. You've got the Champions League as a kind of somewhat an excuse, but at home, the Hearts who have been okay, but rarely ever caused Celtic too many problems with Celtic Park. That felt like this could be a bit of an issue now. But like you said, they got that was a kind of friendly, it was friendly but a kind of time fixture being at home to Livingston. The one after managed to get back on. Like you say, it was a good win at Dens, and then you've got these two games, Rangers, and then obviously St Mirren, which has been a kind of rough place to go. And yeah, ultimately you're just thinking from a Celtic perspective, 6 points and then reset. And thankfully, that's what it ended up being. Again, there was a lot went on in those kind of certainly the Rangers game. I think the St Mirren game was as comfortable as you could hope that kind of game would be at that time of the season within the context. So yeah, you're still kind of looking at the whole kind of first part of the season. It's there's plenty to kind of talk about, and it's kind of hard to still know exactly what the rest of the season is going to be like. So yeah, there's plenty to chat about just now. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll start with the Rangers game, obviously, in the 30th. That was the Saturday. I think a lot of people will probably take different things for the game. The one kind of conclusion I came down on was I don't think Celtic were at their best, and I think we'll get into kind of analysing the performance and things like that. But I think when they had to take big chances like the Bernardo goal, it's a really good finish. We'll get into Bernardo in a bit. Keogh goal comes up with a brilliant finish. And Celtic, I mean, they did make it easy for themselves. A lot of kind of questions I wanted to hash about the build up for the back and the time Celtic made a lot of I think I had a lot of people nervous in the stadium and sitting at home. But in terms of the clinical edge between the two sides, Celtic, as they had last season as well, in big moments at the start of the season, the one big chance Hugo has in the game at Ibrox he takes. And it kind of sort of resulted in the same outcome again. And Celtic just, I thought, well, the better side, but I don't think performance was totally good. Like, I think there's holes to pick.
Yeah, I think, but I think like you said, it's the result. The result was all that mattered, and that's what came out. Yeah, you can pick through there was things that in terms of that build up, like you're saying, I think having Welsh having to drop in, and then he gets injured, and the Frotsy comes on. He's not played since August. He was obviously clearly a bit rusty. He can move it to get into the game. I think just the kind of the way the two teams played, kind of both pressing each other pretty intensely.
Mhm.
Meant there wasn't a huge amount of kind of time on the ball. I don't like the pitch. Pitch at Celtic Park pretty poor there towards the end of that last couple of games. I don't think that helps either. I think just in general, as good as Scales has been, he still takes that wee bit, maybe that extra touch sometimes, or wee bit extra second on the ball. Like I say, you've got Welsh to start with, who was actually not too bad. Before just the story of his kind of career almost up to this point, getting injuries at bad times when it looks like he's going to get an opportunity. I think those were kind of factors for Celtic's point of view in terms of not maybe being the kind of performance that you were. Not the performance, like say you get the result, but I think it in the context of the season, it's probably not one you're going to overanalyze too much. I think Rangers would probably feel the same thing. I don't think Rangers would. I thought the midfield is obviously a huge issue for them in terms of Cantwell and versus McGregor, and I don't see them being as poor in midfield in the other couple of games that they'll be this season. So I think kind of almost as these games sometimes do, they kind of stand on their kind of own, and like you say, they're often decided by kind of moments of just kind of big players stepping up with big moments. And like I say, Bernardo, who we can talk about him a wee bit more. He's had kind of interesting first 6 months at Celtic, coming up with a moment, and Kyogo again probably being criticised to an extent and maybe not being quite what he was under Ange, coming up with a massive moment, and what was it? It's like 7 goals in the 6 games against Rangers in 2023. So, you know, you don't want to rely on that all the time. But I think, and like I say, within the context, I think you wanted your big players to step up, and that's exactly what they've done. And there was other bits and pieces, like I say, we can talk about. But yeah, I think in terms of just issues, those were kind of things that didn't go quite so well. And then, like I say, the big moments are stuff that does go well, and big players as well, like Callum McGregor. Like at the time, plenty of plaudits for him. And again, you watch back bits and pieces from that game, and like I say, just as Roger said himself, just a level above. And even though he is showing signs of decline here and there with age, which is obviously going to come, he's still got that quality yet to stand head and shoulders above anyone else in these kind of games. So yeah, we know what Celtic don't want to be relying on that again. You don't want to be as tight as that. You want to ideally going into the next game in good form and good performances, but I think it's just kind of been the story of that first 6 months. It's just been almost been kind of just finding a way almost, and they managed to do that, and then round it off with the St Mirren as well to just kind of just calm everyone down. I think everyone needed the break from a Celtic perspective. So yeah, not one that I feel needed over analysing too much. And like I say, it's always just to win these games.
Jamie Kyogo, in the past 6 months, you picked up on an interesting point in terms of the kind of difference in the way Kyogo's been played from Ange under Rodgers, and it is a different style. Like, what do you think with Kyogo? Like, there's been a lot made of the term that he's not really been as clinical as he was last season, or is it a change of style? There's a hole to pick with Kyogo, but you see with the goal as well. All he needs that yard. He peels away for Goldson so well. It has a lot to do with the finish, but it's the way he finds the space. I think that I speak about it a lot. His IQ, his attention to detail, and finding kind of big wee pockets of spaces that in big moments I think are so important to the Celtic side. And yeah, you can criticise, has he been at his clinical best? No, but in those games, that is all he needs. He's the best, I think, in Scottish football at finding that yard of space.
Yeah, I think in and around the box like that was. I know it was outside the box. It's not always where he kind of finishes from or takes his shots from, but that's where he's at his best. I think probably with a change of style, he has dropped deeper a lot more and had more touches and been more involved. I don't think he's as effective dropping right into kind of attacking midfield space. You still want him, and I think Rodgers still kind of knows that and accepts that he's the threat with him is. Like I say, it's that movement, particularly that movement in behind. It wasn't quite that from that one, but that's where so many of his goals in the Celtic shot have come from. So I think there's probably a mixture of things there with just probably him adapting to Rodgers asking for different things from him. He probably isn't a typical Rodgers striker, I think, in that kind of system. It was before, obviously, he would have Dembele, Edward, for all he wasn't quite the same kind of physical presence as Dembele. He was still a kind of more of a presence, and he could drop off and do bits and pieces in and around the box. It's not to say Kyogo's not good at that. He's just not. It's not his best kind of attribute. It's not playing his strengths. I don't think so. Obviously, O kind of had his chance, but we feel there's a lot of good stuff there, but it's not quite all together yet. And whether he's got enough about him right now to be relied upon week in, week out, he can't come up with that kind of finish. As much as he only, what was it, 2 in the last 7 games or something. It's not his best patch of form at all. He's got that in his locker, so I think he probably would have known by that game that he wasn't going to make the Asia Cup squad. So I think, as disappointing as that would be for him personally, I think it's a positive for Celtic in terms of, it probably feeds into transfers and all that kind of stuff, because he will be the only striker now. So imagine there'll still be movement to bring another striker in, or certainly somebody who can play there. Ideally, somebody who could hit the ground running, not a kind of project like Go or somebody like that. So I think it's a good thing to have him around for the rest of it. And I think as long as the rest of the kind of teams function better, because like I say, there's been other issues in terms of whether that be, try to find somebody else who when Hatate's been out in the midfield, they seem to finally have got that with Bernardo perhaps just now, or all the changes at the back in terms of how Celtic are building up has been different. So whereas before under Ange, you knew everything that was going to happen, you know the team, and I think he was there, literally in between the posts putting the final touch on it. So I think all those kind of things have probably just led to that. But like you say, I think you can't really, he comes up with these moments. So I was trying to say, you can't. I wouldn't. I think if you'd had O instead of him playing, it would have been a bit more. You might get more in terms of he might fit that, because you've seen it in some of those other games. Maybe fit in the style more, like getting Celtic up the park, being able to hold the ball in and stuff like that. But you just don't get that kind of finish. So you don't get that finish from many players in Scottish football at all, like you say, other than potentially Lawrence Shanklin. But
we'll get into that.
Not get into that.
In terms of Bernardo, I think it's an interesting thing, because I don't think we've ever thought that Brendan Rodgers doesn't trust Bernardo. He's thrown him in big Champions League games. I think in terms of kind of being that tough tackler that's maybe been missing in the Celtic midfield. But what's really kind of intrigued me, and I know you wrote about this in the Celtic Way, and I saw one of your tweets the other day, you were talking about the kind of improvement in his XG and his improvement in his passing, is there seems to be a confidence in him in terms of the kind of being on the ball and being able to drive forward. What is it with Bernardo that's kind of really impressed you and kind of turned the fans as well? Because I think a lot of fans who were thinking about the permanent, kind of try to get him on a permanent deal, as he's shown enough, but in the space of 2 weeks, there's a lot of people with a different opinion.
Yeah, I think it was just question marks over why is he not being given more opportunities domestically. He was trusted in Europe because, and it was quite clear, it's quite evident he's very good off the ball. He's very willing in terms of pressing, getting a foot in. That's all the stuff that you need European wise for Celtic. But you were questioning, well, is he not offering enough on the ball? And even those games, Livingston and Dundee, I think, because like I said, I wrote about it just before the Rangers game. So that was even the kind of the goal that he scored at Dundee. You were still questioning, is he getting on the ball enough? Is he creating enough? Because if he's going to play as that kind of, McGregor's the deepest, it's him and O'Reilly. If you're one of those two, just kind of 8/10s for Celtic, with all the ball you've got to create, and there was just none of it. So that was the kind of point I made after the St Mirren game. So even after the Rangers game, obviously, a game with it, I never done a scout report on him, but you'd seen bits and pieces that he could strike a ball. He's got good technique anyway. So that was good to see. But you were still, and again, the Rangers game, you're going to have less of the ball, so maybe there wasn't as much opportunity to be creative. But against St Mirren, against 10 men, against a team that's not been in great form, you're like, well, right, here's an opportunity. And he did, they started to, and that's all confidence probably from, scoring his first goal, scoring a goal in the derby, all that kind of stuff. But it was just a question of, does he have that in his game? Is he actually capable of doing that? And I think, 3 key passes, and like I said, it was like 0.5 XG assisted or XA, if you want to say it like that. So 3 reasonable quality chances, good quality chances he's created, not knocking it off to somebody in the 30 yards out for goal for them to have a strike. Really, obviously Taylor takes his and O'Reilly takes his. So, and really creative for the second pass to scoop it over. So, yeah, I think that's more. Obviously, all that the other off the ball stuff is really good. You don't but I think if Celtic are going to shell out as much money as they're saying, 5-6 million, on a player in that position where they're going to be more advanced, you've got to offer more on the ball. You've got to be more creative. You've got to offer that threat in terms of goal from striking as well. So I think he'll have, with Hatate being away, that gives him at least, you'd think another few games to keep a momentum going. Obviously, there's the break, but gives him a real chance for Celtic not to be in a position where we'll have to rush Hatate back straight away, which would be good as well. So I think we need to see more of that on a more consistent basis. Still not probably enough minutes to make a judgment call on it yet, but I think if you can do that on a consistent basis, kind of everything you're looking for. Plus, you add in the fact that there's very little chance, unfortunately, that Matt O'Reilly is probably going to be a Celtic player come the start of next season. So that's a position where you're going to have to go, and Turnbull probably going to leave out a contract as well. So that's a position where you're going to need bodies in anyway. If you've got one there already who's acclimatised, has shown enough, and you can do that deal for that kind of price, I think that'll represent good bit of business. And for a summer transfer window that's been mixed at the very best, that would probably be a good bit of business again. And hopefully Benfica have got another 1 or 2 kicking about that could do a job too.
Yeah, and obviously Benfica have turned them well in the past with Jota and things like that. But I want to touch on, you said about summer recruitment, a player I wanted to touch on that is probably going to get a chance, obviously, with the injuries to Carter Vickers and Welsh, is Mike Nawrocki, who came back into the side against Rangers. And I thought he did fine in the second half. You could tell he was a bit rusty, but I thought in the St Mirren game, I thought he looked a lot more composed. I don't think there's clearly something that Rodgers maybe hasn't impressed him. That I think that's clear. But in terms of performance when he's been in the side, the chances he's had, I don't think he's been too bad. I think there's obviously a bit of rawness there in terms of being a complete centre defender, and I think he's a different version of Starfelt, which I think he was obviously signed to replace. But he's got a chance to cement his place. As he got it in his locker to really kind of solidify that chance, because Scales has come in and done really well, and as you say, can take an extra touch, but has really taken his chance well. Nawrocki, whether obviously opportunities are coming his way because he clearly doesn't fancy Lager Bielka, but that's a big opportunity for Nawrocki to really go in and really make a claim of it. I'm entitled to make this chance. A lot of money been spent. I'm still young, but he's, in terms of kind of the opportunity he's going to get, I think he's got to take it with both hands.
Yeah, I think he's you can see he's too good a player to not even be in a squad, which is what's happened to some extent. Because I suppose you take what Roger said at kind of face value, that he's had little niggles and things like that, but it's clear he's been training for quite a while since he's come back. I know he wasn't in the Champions League squad, so that's an issue that you don't, you'd rather have backups there who, it was Phillips. He was the one that was trusted because experience and stuff like that. But even those first, I was looking at him again today for a bit for Celtic Way this week. his first couple of games were really good. Really kind of. I think at that point you go back to August, start of August, and Starfelt left. He'd come in. You're like, right, well, he was going to be kind of first backup. Starfelt's left. Right, well, he's now the one because he was the most expensive signing, just shy of $5 million.
Yeah,
It's quite a significant fee for Celtic, given the kind of other fees that were given out for some of the other players that haven't worked out. That's one that he played Europa League football, played Malaysia Warsaw, and you were thinking, right, well, he just slots in there next to Carter Vickers, but then obviously lots change happened in that time in terms of their injuries, scales kind of coming to the fore and all that sort of thing. So, like you say, like Lagerbielke, who not the quickest, I think that's maybe another issue with Rodgers. Seeing him, he doesn't look as, I don't think he's as quick as Starfelt. Celtic will still, I think Alan Morrison's talked about this last week while like even had some up just recently in the Celtic way about Celtic holding an even higher line under Rodgers than they were under Postecoglou. So it's not going to that those are kind of things that I presume have been things that have held him back. That all right, he's not going to suddenly be turning to have mad pace, and that's not going to happen. That can't happen. But there's ways he can kind of tailor his game and stuff like that. And what he has shown is really good ability on the ball. I mean, the ball through for Matt O'Reilly in the build up to Kyogo's goal against Rangers was, yeah. There's not too many other centre backs that Celtic have got the ability to do that. I think he's other than the pace, most of these other defending's spot on as well. I think obviously mistimed the one that led to the free kick for Tavernier, but he's really kind of reads the game really well, sound positioning, all that sort of stuff. The other question marks aerially, I think he's looked a wee bit suspect on that, and if he's not going to be paired with Carter Vickers, that could be an issue. I think I think he's only won about a third of his headers. It's a really small, 2 games start season, 2 games. So you give him the kind of pass that I think it's like 300 odd league minutes, but it's one of the pretty much the lowest of all centre backs in the Premiership. That's a bit of an issue, and probably something again that Rodgers would probably be looking at. Again, I'd done a scouting report on him for Celtic over the summer, and I think he's for Poland over the season. It was probably in the kind of bottom 50%. So it's not like there was kind of more. He played in the right at back 3. So again, there's changes there for him to kind of get used to playing in a 4 again, because he didn't do a whole lot of Malaysia, I don't think. So he's probably not been as needed to have been involved in as many aerial duels, but playing in Scotland against the kind of Premiership attackers that you're going to come up against, you're going to need to deal with that at some point. If it's with Carter Vickers can probably take a bit of that off, take that burden. But Scales, for again as good as Scales has been too aerially, I think he's probably roughly about Starfelt, but again, Starfelt wasn't always the greatest in there either. He'd get caught out now and again in that regard too. So I think they're definitely 1 or 2 wee question marks over him, but there's a lot of other really good stuff too that you can see that I think it'll be interesting to see. I think if Scales, there's talk new deal and all that sort of stuff, you would imagine if Carter Vickers returns to fitness, it would be those two. And it's up to Nawrocki then to show that he can take one of those jerseys. Carter Vickers' injury issues seem to be kind of persistent. I'd be surprised if he plays every game between now and the end of the season or when they come back. So we're going to need a third centre back who's going to play a significant amount of minutes. And like I say, it's up to him, but I think there's enough there that, and I think Roger said it himself that he'd play his part in the second part of the season. So yeah, I think again, like talking about some of our transfers, it's some of these players seem to have a load of really good stuff, but then 1 or 2 areas where that's a bit of an issue, and that's maybe what has held some of them back, some of them more than others, obviously. But I think with Nawrocki, there's enough good stuff there, and he's still young for that position, 22, I think.
Yeah.
So I think he's got enough to develop. and yeah, I'd be quite keen to see as much of him as possible the second part of season 2. Let's say it's just going to be interesting how that, he's played on the right side, obviously with coming in alongside Scales, but he played on the left when he played with Carter Vickers. So again, that's something he'll be, you're getting thrown back in, but you're getting thrown back in on the other side. Obviously, that has, for centre backs, that has a wee bit of, difference in terms of your angles and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think it's probably not been the first 6 months he would have thought he would have had at Celtic, but yeah, enough signs there towards the end, those last couple of games, that he can contribute as well.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Let's move on to St Mirren. It felt as if we were back 12 months. Obviously, fast start, 2 goals in 5 minutes, and it just kind of totally refreshed a lot of supporters in terms of the way, just how quickly Celtic went about their business. It was obviously a feat under Ange a lot, where they would score early and it would just completely kind of calm a lot of things down. And it just it had that feeling to it. It was a weird kind of. It was the 2nd of January. It was 5 o'clock. A lot of people were. It was just one of the weird days, wasn't it? But it just felt as if Celtic were. There was more of a kind of urgency about them to get the goals in early in the second half. We're down to the St Mirren were down to 10 men. Get the 3rd goal. It just felt very routine, and I don't think you can say that about a lot of games in the first 6 months, as you say.
No, you were. I think even at 2-0, you were a bit like, oh. I think obviously when they get the man set off right before half time, it kind of kills it. But again, what was even good about looking at that part of the game was obviously the game against Rangers a wee bit different, but did not deal with Rangers going a man down very well there.
Yeah.
But and obviously it's going to be different. You're 2-0 up away from home at St Mirren, but in terms of kept creating chances. That was I think a lot of times, like with a Rodgers team, you would maybe see 2-0 up away from home, man up. It would just be the whole death by football thing. But we kept creating chances, which was really good to see. But yeah, like I say, I think that funny time of year, funny kick-off, just so quickly after the game. I think the right team in terms of keeping everything the same. Last game before the break, exactly what you want. Get out there early, get a goal or two up in the first. To be fair, I think there's been a lot of games like that where Celtic have started really fast under Rodgers, but if we've not got that goal in the first 10, 15 minutes, things seem to grind to a gradual halt almost at times. Some of the more some of the poor performances, whereas you see there, I don't think St Mirren helped themselves with the setup, and kind of the wing backs were getting caught out. Obviously, caught out for first goal in Maeda getting them behind. But even I think Celtic played through far too easily with the front two, even in that first half. A place where, like you said, it's been a kind of tricky ground for Celtic the last couple of seasons. Was in the last season. But yeah, everything you kind of exactly after, because the worry is you get that kind of big win, you're big kind of on a high after that you can then go and if any points are dropped there, it almost wipes it out kind of thing. So especially with just then that's your last game for a good few weeks, especially in the league. So you just wanted to get the win, and yeah, it was again. Given context, time of the season, not one to overanalyze too much, but I think that the positives would definitely be that the fast start gets rewarded, and that even with the context of them going down to 10 men, that kept kind of the foot on the pedal and kept creating chances, and were able to get Hatate on the pitch, were able to get Abada back on the pitch as well. So those were all kind of pretty much as ideal as you can hope for at that time of the season. And I think by the time that kind of wrapped up, you were like, yeah, we could do a wee break here.
What about Lewis Palmer? Because I thought I thought it was a weird game in terms of, like, there's no doubt in terms of chance creation, in terms of numbers. I think he's been there. I think some of his contributions have been very, very good. But I've thought for a while, Stuart, there's a lot of over reliance on him to create. I think he's, in terms of, like, especially if you're playing like Maeda on one side and Palmer on the other. One thing about Maeda is he's not a chance creator, and to the level of Palmer. But I think we're now at a stage with Palmer where we know, not that I'm saying he's predictable, but we know a lot of the time he's going to try and cut into his right hand side. And I think at times, especially in Scottish football, when you're playing against kind of low blocks and packed defences, I think it's very, very tough to really kind of change that from his locker as such. But I think there is a player there, but I think there is always, when you're going to have a player who's going to create so many chances, there is going to be a lack of consistency.
Yeah, I think he's a really interesting one because, like I said, he does, and he's kind of like top level kind of goal contribution stats. Not that are fantastic. He's off. He's not Maeda level at all, but he's actually really good off the ball as well, pressing and stuff like that too. It's just a kind of other people have kind of picked up on that on this kind of thing, but it's more a kind of that he needs 5, 6 opportunities to create that one good opportunity. A lot of I think against Dundee it was something like 9 key passes or something ridiculous, but a lot of them were maybe like chipped balls from one side of the pitch, which is a good thing having the locker, a winger to be able to switch play like that. But fall into somebody at the back post at an angle, so the quality of that chance is pretty poor. So that, I think that's part of the issue with him, is that even though he will create a lot, that there's sometimes not always the kind of biggest, the highest quality chances. And like say predictability in terms of that, cutting inside. I've done a kind of bit on him where you're looking to him, like, can you drive outside a wee bit more? Can you? No, you've not got the pace, but can you? You've got to mix it up a wee bit. There's been signs now and again that he can do that, but he's always going to want to, do that cut inside, and because he's got exceptional ability with it in terms of striking the ball, in terms of he can find, he can pick out crosses. The one, there's been crosses, outside his boot and real proper quality, but this is mixed in with a lot of cutting inside and giving the ball away, or turning back out, or just turning the ball over at a high volume, which I think in some ways is almost suited to Celtic, because you're going to have so much of the ball, you're going to get, if you give the ball away, chances are you're going to get on the ball again in the next couple of minutes. So it almost works that way as well. But I can totally understand why he's starting to become almost a bit of a divisive player with fans. That there's some that are just so frustrated with him, and that's understandable because he's not always the most. He's definitely not the most efficient with the ball. Isn't like kind of the opposite of Maeda. When Maeda does, the times that he does get into kind of goal scoring opportunities are usually really good ones. But it's the creation, and it's been an ongoing issue. Again, there's some of the guys like Alan Morrison and that I've touched on the Celtic way the last few months, in terms of this real lack of chances being generated from the wings. There's been so many changes there, so many players had their opportunities there that haven't taken them, whether it be Yang or like other signs who haven't even had a look in terms of Tilio. It just doesn't seem to be anyone there other than Palmer and obviously Maeda, but he brings other kind of qualities. Having a Bada back should hopefully, again, he's not one who's he has more a goal threat than a creator, but he can create as well. So having him back in would maybe, in terms of wingers creating chances, ease a bit of that off of Palmer. But I think that's going to be an ongoing thing with Palmer, that he's always going to be that kind of player that will kind of not always will need 3 or 4, 5 or 6 opportunities on the ball before the one bit of quality comes out. But I can see wee bits and pieces, like I said, in terms of, it does seem like there's been some games where he's tried to drive it outside a bit more. I think, like you say, there's a great point in terms of against, especially at St Mirren, where there's probably particularly one of his poorer games, not only a low block and a kind of not a lot of time in the ball, but a really tight pitch, really stodgy pitch, just not going to help him. So hopefully, like I said, hopefully that's an area again. Potentially, there might be somebody else brought in there. I'm not too sure, but in terms of having a bad back, there's a wee bit more options out there that he's not going to be relied upon so much. And like talking about all kind of fits in terms of talking about Bernardo, hopefully bringing a bit more Hatate back, you can get more kind of creativity for different parts of the pitch because wasn't getting a whole lot at all from the middle either without Hatate there and until Bernardo started to, the last couple of games. So yeah, he's a really interesting one. I can totally understand because he's frustrated with him, but then there's been some really really good moments of quality in this first 6 months. So I think you just have to, again, looking at it in the context of how the summer transfer window has been pretty hit or miss, you'd still put him in that category and just accept that he's got these couple of deficiencies in terms of his decision making and that kind of thing. That you just kind of have to go with, as long as you're getting other bits of quality, as long as you're feeding him enough. I think in terms of he's getting plenty of the ball, and I think he'll still put more in play his part as well in the second part of the season.
Yeah, I think there's so many positives to take. There's been some amazing moments, but you can see that. I've thought for a while, as you say, well, like Hatate been missing and no real kind of creativity coming for midfield. It's been really, there has been a lot of pressure on him, and as I say, if you're getting 8 or 9 chances a game and one comes off, there is that one big moment, but there's also a lot of inconsistency. But it's that kind of double-edged sword with a player that like that. But before we kind of talk into transfers, I want to touch on the other players in midfield. Obviously, Callum McGregor, I think, in the last few games has been outstanding. Just in terms of, like, I think the first goal against St Mirren's a good example. The link-up play with him and O'Reilly is brilliant. Just the way they're able to have that relationship, that almost a telepathy it is, in terms of they know where each other will be. O'Reilly, I wouldn't say he's fell off the boil, he hasn't at all, but he's maybe not been to the levels he was at the start of the season, but he's still just in these big moments. I think he's superb. I just think McGregor and O'Reilly in the past couple of games, they've been under the radar, but they deserve a lot of credit.
Yeah, I think O'Reilly, just like I said, he's just been, maybe not been quite at those kind of levels at the start of the season, but yeah, I think it's him and McGregor. It's always the story of that midfield, the first part of the season being who is that other player going to be if Hatate's injured, and but yeah, I think obviously playing a wee bit different with O'Reilly, probably having a wee bit more freedom, I think's obviously helped. There's all those kind of comments at the start of the season where he was maybe, hinting that, not that he wasn't enjoying playing under Ange, but just kind of his kind of style of play is pretty. I mean, it's fluid, but it's rigid within that you've got a set bunch of roles that you've to carry out. Not too much room to roam about, but I think his character is in general is more a kind of I don't want to say free spirit, but you know what I mean. I kind of more
a Rodgers type of.
More that he can be. He seems a kind of player that would respond more to being given a wee bit more of a license to just go into different areas of the pitch and get on the ball. But McGregor again, I think it's kind of briefly touching on that. You can still see, especially Champions League games, that losing that yard of pace, and there's going to come a time in the next couple of seasons where you think in terms of reliability on him is going to you're going to have to think more seriously about that. So yeah, but in terms of his leadership and all that sort of stuff, and you could tell he's talking about the Rangers game in terms of his performance there, like he's still got that ability to be a level above, and I think that was, like I said, that as much as it's probably that time of the season, I don't want to read too much in it. But if you want to do a read a lot in it, I think that was really encouraging. That was more the kind of the type of speed of passing and all the sort of stuff that Rodgers has said that he wants to see more of. We just haven't seen it a lot. So that was pretty encouraging too. So yeah, I think it's just going to be that who's the other one in that midfield three for the second part of the season again. Hopefully Hatate can get some minutes with Japan and comes back, and like I said earlier, it's that opportunity for Bernardo to hopefully mean that it's not an over reliance on Hatate. When you're talking about chance creation and all that sort of stuff, that he can at least fill that there and be serious competition too. So yeah, I think midfield's probably the one area now with Bernardo's emergence that you're not kind of worried about too much for the second part of the season, especially if Hatate can stay fit too.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of transfer, maybe not in terms of news, but I think there's a lot to talk about. We'll start with potential outgoings. I think there's some interest, obviously. I think the likes of Hidiguchi and Kobayashi, I think, are already kind of pretty certain they're going to be moved on. Tillio and Kwon seem to be getting interest in terms of potential loan moves. Now, I've seen Marco Tillio referred to as a flop. He's only played some like 12 minutes, but again, it's just been that kind of level of trust. Like, I think the summer recruitment has been a bit questionable in terms of players coming in terms of project signings who shown a bit initially, but already you can see that the levels to be a kind of key Celtic squad player, that they're not there yet.
No, I think probably caught between change of manager. There still seems to be some sort of with Celtic, not somewhat ambiguity, but not really got a director of football. We've got Matt Law as a head of recruitment. Roger's saying he'll work with the players at the club again. I think there always needs to be, if that's your setup, you're not going to have an out-and-out director of football who's overseeing the whole thing, who's involved in bringing in the manager, who's involved in setting the style of play, setting the philosophy for the playing philosophy for the whole club, academy, all that sort of stuff. You're not going to have that. There needed to be more of a, felt like there was already a lot of these deals lined up that when Rodgers came in, it was like, well, we're quite far down the line with a lot of these. Whereas it probably would have been as well. And it felt like there was that during the summer that Rodgers was like, well, I want to come in and assess the squad, all that kind of thing you do when a new manager comes in. But maybe that just felt like a lot of these players just weren't really necessary. Not in terms of Kwon, for example, a physical presence in the middle of the park in the number 6. Some Celtic kind of been trying to
do it for a while, yeah.
Not tried it for a long time. Tried Abelgard, been interested in other kind of players of that type over the last couple of seasons. Never really cracked it. I think to do that, to bring that kind of type of player in from the second tier of career you're probably at a stretch there. Is whatever, he'd been an under 23 international. He clearly has some sort of something to offer, but that just didn't seem like the kind of something that was necessary at that time. Then when Rodgers coming in, but before with Ange, you could have maybe said, "Oh, these are the kind of players that he can work with. That he knows how to get the best out of. He knows the level or whatever." Yeah, I think. And then there was a whole centre back issue with the fact you brought in Nawrocki, like you said for Starfelt at that point, and then you're like, well, we need somebody else then to come in. And the Lagerbielke one seemed had kind of agent kind of recommendation kind of, and plenty of other people have spoken. I don't think he's a bad player. Maybe is that he's been kind of profiled or whatever, particularly for a Rodgers centre back. Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see the kind of who has. I thought there might have been a wee bit more, like say, a bit more concrete. There's been bits and pieces, and again, those players have more or less been keeping in that kind of profile. You've got a Portuguese player that's been at Benfica, and the left back, or was a kind of winger, Thiago Arojo, yeah, and Kvistgaard, the Danish guy again. That seems 21, 22, Scandinavian leagues. That's more the kind of market that I presume Celtic keep a very close eye on, given we've had players there from recently, and that is a kind of market that you want to be keeping an eye on. Anyway, I think there does. You just stripping all that out and just looking at the squad, you look at it and go, well, you do need a wee bit more experience. You do need a bit more. You do need a bit of a better balance between these. Can't all be 18, 19-year-olds from really not really poor league, but you know what I mean. Really, kind of, to keep having that kind of hit rate from those leagues is. I think you had a lot of things kind of fell into place with Ange having worked with a lot of those players, or having seen a lot of those players up close in Japan, and being able to, as much as you wouldn't have spoke the same kind of, but having that understanding of how those kind of players tick and all. And not to say that Rodgers doesn't have that with some of them, those players. It's just that all that kind of fell into place at one time, and now seem to be caught kind of between sticking with that or doubling down on it, almost like the summer seemed to be. Right, we'll bring in a whole bunch of them, but unless you're going to think more strategically in terms of, we will bring in somebody like Kwon, but you know what, we'll go and loan him to a team in Belgium or something like that for a season, kind of like what Brighton do in the Premier League.
Yeah.
Or home, again, he's a good example, shown really good promise, really good attributes, but he's been given opportunities. He's not, clearly Rodgers, I think he's up to it now. So what's his next? What's his pathway into the Celtic team just now? Is it, just sitting and not making squads? You can't go and play in the Lowland League. That's just not a viable option. So there needs to be more of a bigger kind of picture thinking about what Celtic are doing with recruitment. That'll maybe come in the summer. I think for now, you are looking at those kind of. I think left back just in general. I think Taylor's actually probably played his couple of best games towards the end.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Bernabei as well. I think Bernabei's clearly.
But if Bernabei's not fancied at all, you've got no backup at all. And I think even at right back as well, Johnson's kind of struggled at times. You know what you're going to get with Ralston, but again, that's an area you'd look at. That's probably the summer too. But I think left back, I think obviously striker, but even I think Chris Garden would be ideal in terms of he can also play off the left, or almost kind of play kind of a wee bit as a second striker potentially in one of the midfield positions. He would be he might be a good fit, but as has been well documented, there's also options in the Scottish Premiership that I've no doubt Celtic have been looking at.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, I think Shankland. I don't see Shankland working from a Celtic point of view, but Miovski, I think it's clear that Rodgers has been keen to have him watched on a few occasions. I think he is somebody who would fit the bill, but he is going to cost a lot. Is that the sort of thing you can do in January?
Yeah, it's maybe not one for January. It's like I say, let's try to, if you bring in that, O's going to be back kind of mid-February, so you're still be thinking about his development. Like, you bring in somebody like Miovski, be him or Kyogo, like, you would ideally get to the point where Ange had it that, you give somebody, an hour and somebody the last half hour, but I think a lot of that was, Celtic were really comfortable in the league at that point, and things were just ticking along anyway. It's not like that now. Things are a bit more kind of fluid, a bit disparate. So you wouldn't be wanting to do that a lot. I think if you bring somebody like Miovski in, then he needs to, he'd be looking to start every kind of second game, every third game, properly pushing Kyogo. And then where does that leave somebody like Cole? Whereas if you do bring in somebody like I said, like Chris Garden, who can kind of fill, a couple of positions, that maybe can mean you can still keep giving Olo the minutes that he needs to develop as well. But it's just where the kind of thinking is at, is the thinking at that, so we're in a proper title race here. Do we want to, go out and spend more money on project players? going into a title run in, or do you want to go and you've got two options there, even if you do want to consider Shankland, who no doubt would score goals for Celtic, but I agree, I don't think he's a fit. And you can't buy players just for 6 months. He's 28 now, and he's I don't think he's anywhere near the kind of level that as much Kyogo obviously scoring in the Champions League and stuff like that. But you've got to think about how does that player fit in at that level, because that's got to be your kind of aspiration, ideally, on European level. And I know he scored in Europe, and don't want to knock that either, but just in terms of the level, Majowski obviously you think could have a higher ceiling being that bit younger. It's how, I don't know, it might well come down to the last couple of days of the window and how how they're feeling about it. Well, like say Kyogo stayed and maybe scores 2 or 3 goals, and you feel, right, well, maybe we can go and bring somebody like that, or we can bring in somebody else a bit more kind of projected that can kind of cover a couple of bits. Not to say that Chris Gardner's project, that from what I've watched, I think he would have a pretty immediate impact. I think he's got, again, it's that problem with labelling all these players projects, that you can have somebody that's a project but can contribute right away. You can have others that can't. I think you can tell with him in terms of who he's been linked with and stuff. The other clubs that are going to be keeping an eye on him, that he might be one that could do that. I think, yeah. It's a cost. It's like you say, Majowski's probably about maybe 4 or 5 million easy.
Yeah, easily, yeah.
Starting.
I would rather pay that than pay 3 for Shankland, though. Like, it's that, like, in terms of long-term objective, Majowski's going to progress regardless. Shankland, I just don't think he's at that. Maybe not that he's at that level. I think he will score goals, but in terms of for a 28-year-old paying that sum of money, I just don't think it works in terms of.
Yeah, he's at a stage of his career as well where he's going to, I almost seem like Hearts is kind of perfect for him just now. That he's the main man. He play week in, week out. He's captain. I mean, obviously, 28. You probably got another move in him, so you could maybe build a championship, something like that. And England is going to, or even likes the Rangers as well. Would they play every week at Rangers when they've spent? I know Dessers is maybe but Danilo would play in front of him when he's fit, when the money's been spent on him, and looks like he's got. Yeah, I think Majowski would be the more sensible one. It's just whether, like you say, the fee is going to be something that's doable in January. I wouldn't be against that at all. I think, like you say, that's going to be the conversation that'll be going on. It's like what. Like it's been like the whole 6 months feels like already. It's what just now until we can get to the summer and sort of load some of this stuff out in terms of how the squads want, how Rodgers wants the squad to look going forward. Is what can we do to get kind of to maximise chances of ensuring we'll win the league, because obviously the kind of prize on offer in terms of the Enhanced Champions League kind of pot and all that sort of stuff. In terms of money, in terms of the expanded to next season that's on offer, that that's going to be into the thinking that what can we do to make that happen as much as possible. And there's other areas I would look at, including goalkeeper, but it doesn't look like that one's going to happen. So yeah, I think it would definitely be, if you can bring in somebody that's going to score, potentially hit, 10 goals between now and the end of the season, whether that be as a kind of backup or, getting every second or third game start to give Kyogo a bit of a break. I think that would be priority for me, definitely.
Yeah, I think from now up until the end of January, I think it's going to be constant rumours and speculation, but again, it's something we're going to be focusing on for the next few weeks. That is going to wrap up this episode of the Celtic Report. We'll have no episode next week. We'll be back 2 weeks on Monday after the Bucky Thistle game, so we'll be over that. Stuart, I can't thank you enough for being on again, mate. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for tuned in. Please follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube, Patreon and podcast channels. Thank you very much.